Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here with you. Juan, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but the study is very much ongoing, so the results are quite preliminary. But in any case, I'm going to talk about dynamics that can emerge in spontaneous interaction. Spontaneous meaning where you are not instructed to synchronize. And this study is ongoing as a part of my postdoc in the lab, in the Cine lab, led by Ivano Konvalinka in Copenhagen. So the last...
I'm the tech whiz here. I'm loving this role, I can tell you.
Okay. In the last decades, a lot of behavioral studies focused on unintentional coordination. And one of the first studies, for example, with the rocking chairs, they found that spontaneous coordination can occur, indeed, in individuals in rocking chairs. And they follow also the self-organization patterns of couple oscillators. In another study, Uli et al. Colleagues found that in a kind of mirror game paradigm, they found that participants that sat across to each other, when they have their eyes closed, they kept an individual kind of face and frequency, but when they open their eyes and they move their fingers vertically, they had joined the frequency and the phase. And interestingly also, when there was a next period where they closed their eyes again, there was a kind of transfer of this effect. So they didn't go back to their individual pattern of frequencies, but they had a little bit of effect of their joint movement. This unintentional coordination has been shown also in verbal communication, where they have seen that the postural dynamics of one person can significantly restrict also the postural dynamics of another person via verbal communication. And also in a group of participants, unintentional coordination also emerged. Here, participants did some arm swinging. And also at the neural level, in a paradigm where they had to imitate each other, in instances where there was a phase locking behaviorally, they found on neural level desynchronization in the connectivity in alpha and mu range. All this, through these paradigms, and of course, it's not only these paradigms, we have seen that the spontaneous coordination can emerge, and most of these paradigms, they used the movements end up to be quite rhythmic in the end, like vertically or rocking chair. Another line of research, as we saw before with ASAP and also with PAN, they focused on the joint improvisation, and they assigned to participants roles, kind leader of 4 roles or no role assigned, and they measured the synchronization level. So here you can see one of the early studies by Noy, where you see the blue circles is when participants were assigned the leader and follower role. And you can see that the leaders is the blue circles, kind of follow some individual the velocity profiles as seen in the space of kurtosis and skewness. Now you cannot see the skewness in that case. They had some more asymmetrical patterns where there is a higher skewness. When there was no role assigned to the participants and they were asked to synchronize, you see that there is these green circles where participants more move into more canonical patterns of movements, and that they are more symmetrical and easily to predict. in another study of Marius Zimmerman, where also participants they were asked to improvise in a variation of the mirror game. They had some conditions. Here we talk about three: the individual condition where they could not see the other participant. Then there is the interactive condition, where the shutter screen that was between participants was transparent and they could see each other, and the observed condition where one participant was moving and just observed by the other person, and they showed that this affected the movement properties. So the movements were more smooth in the interactive condition, and the frequency was lower and the variability was lower. But also in the observed condition, they found this pattern compared to the individual condition. These experiments, they mostly assigned roles to participants, leader or follower or no role, and then they measured the synchronization level. Another studies that was also inspiration for us, they here, for example, it's a music coordination paradigm where they have to produce intervals of 500 milliseconds, and they are coupled to, they hear each other, and they measure the synchronization level. It was the same across participants, but they digged into whether, although the synchronization level is the same, did they follow different kind of patterns to achieve this synchronization. And here you can see that interval for participant 1 and for participant 2. And what they found was that there were different kinds of strategies. So on the right, you see the lagged correlations in -1 and +1. So if the +1 is positive, it means that the participant 1 is following participant 2. And if the +1 is positive, the opposite. And what we can see is that they found a pattern of a very low correlation in all lagged correlations, meaning that no one of them followed the other. So probably they just kept a perfect tempo. While they found the other strategy that mostly emerges in coordination, that is mutual adaptation. So you see positive lagged correlations -1 and +1, so meaning that the one followed the other. And they digged deeper into this to analyze more of these strategies. And they used the Kuramoto model of coupled oscillators, where each individual, the blue and the orange, you see, was modeled through two oscillators representing the perception and the action unit, and that they were intrinsically linked through, you see the eye there, but also the action unit, the action oscillator of one was extrinsically linked to the perception of the other individual. And they used the empirical data where they had a group of participants, they followed more kind of this leading, they call it strategy, or mutual adaptation strategy, or leading and follow strategy. And they found that this leading strategy led to a higher within person, higher coupling within person and lower between person coupling. While the mutual adaptation was the opposite, it led to higher between person coupling compared to lower within person coupling. And so the leading actually looks like more a non-coupled condition when they don't see the other person here. And these were more experts. So we can see that the expertise and these interpersonal strategies can modulate how we integrate the other in the coordination, or we segregate from them. And finally, relevant for our study, we used the social, we mapped a social network from classrooms in the university, because we wanted to see how these social network properties can affect the real-time interaction. And some properties of social network have been associated with higher volume in areas related to social processing. And here we focused on out degree, which is connections that you mentioned for other people. So it's outward connections, because unfortunately we cannot have the whole. It's not that the students run and want to take part in the study. So the more centrality measures or reciprocal ties, we cannot have them with the lower part of the network. And we focus on the out degree, that is more how many friends actually you mentioned in the network. And the out degree has been associated in general how tight you feel in a group, and how important is the group for you. So for example, people at work that they mention high out degrees are less prominent, let's say, to leave the work. So it's related to how tight you feel to the group. And we varied this out degree between pairs. But apart from the classroom, we also measure the ego networks. So they also do another questionnaire there after the experiment, where they mention their friends outside of the class. And we invite people that they are non-friends for now for the study. And the aim of our study was to investigate these patterns of maybe how we integrate or segregate from the other in improvisation tasks where spontaneous synchronization can emerge, and how social network properties could affect these real-time interactions. But as I said, it's at the preliminary stage, and we had a variation of the mirror game, and people sat across each other, and there is a shutter screen that can be transparent or they can be opaque or transparent. And the participants, they either are asked to have interesting and create horizontal movements in their preference, but they don't see the other person, or they can see the other person, but they have the same instructions, just produce interesting and creative horizontal movements. And then it's a final condition where we ask them to produce interesting and creative movements, but synchronize with the other person. It's a block design. So in the first block, we have 8 trials of more spontaneous condition and 4 trials of solo condition, all of 1 minute. Then they fill in a questionnaire about how they felt for the interaction. And the second block is 8 trials of synchronization and 4 trials of solo condition, but these are intermixed. The order is only for spontaneous to synchronization, so that we don't have the transfer effect if they do the spontaneous after they have been instructed to synchronize. And they do the questionnaire, and in the end, they fill questionnaires about the ego-social network and the other social traits they trait. You can see here a video. Now it's not real participants. And yes, it was just for a video there in the lab.
And they hear each other?
No, okay, now you don't see, but they wear earplugs, and also there is a random noise playing quite high. Yes. And here also, okay, the cross is there, but normally now we have a sticker on the shutter screen.
Whoa.
And, oh, sorry. And here you can see some movement data. It's after the real part, after Hilbert transformation and the faces for 2 participants. And below you see the phase difference. And this is for the solo condition. Now, okay, it's trembling a bit, I don't know why, but you see that they don't really synchronize, and their faces are kind of all over the plane. Then I will show you part of a more spontaneous condition, or how we hoped the spontaneous condition would be, because, okay, it is from a trial of a diet, but it's not that it's always like that. It's so, okay, they don't synchronize, but at some point, they kind of, you see, they fall into synchrony, and then again, they just go out of synchrony. And then this is the synchronized condition. At least they do their tasks there. And the preliminary results, as we can see, this is the phase locking value, so how close they are in phase. And we see, okay, that clearly the joint condition, they are much more phase locked. But the spontaneous condition, we kind of hope at least that it would be more in the middle of the two, but it's much closer to the solo condition. And then this is the relative phase distribution, where again we see for the joint condition that it's very clear that they are locked around 0 degrees, but the joint and the spontaneous have no difference, the kind of uniform distribution. But probably there are also some things that are smeared there because maybe somebody is leading more, somebody is following, and here we have not captured them. This is lagged correlations and the maximum value for the different lags. And we see also that the correlation values are higher for the joint compared to the other good conditions, and the lag is much smaller. And this, yes, be around 30 milliseconds, yeah, 50. No, 30 milliseconds for the joint. And when we see the correlations at 0 time, we see a similar pattern with the kind of the PLV, that again, the joint is much more different than the other two conditions, but the spontaneous is somehow different from solo, but a small difference. And the last is the percentage of segments of these windows that the correlation at 0 is higher, so there is high correlation, so above 0.5. And it follows a similar pattern. And then we applied the time frequency analysis to investigate a little bit the movement properties. And what we see is that similar also to previous studies, the frequency of the movements are lower in the joint condition and also in the spontaneous are kind of lower compared to the solo condition. And the variability of the frequency is also similar to previous studies, is lower in the joint condition, and also it's lower in the spontaneous. So when actually the difference comes more when they see the other or not. And also spectral entropy makes sense, similar to variability. And finally, though, the frequency, how similar are the frequencies between the two participants? We see the difference there only when they kind of coordinate, but in the spontaneous, we don't see any difference. And after each block, we ask some questions about the interaction. Only when we ask them to reply, only when the shutter screen was on, so when they could see the other person. And we asked how much they to rate the experience of togetherness, whether they thought that they led the movements or they followed, whether they paid attention to the other person, whether they felt that they cooperated, and whether they felt that they were influenced. And finally, how much they felt they were integrated with the other person. And we can see, okay, of course, that in the joint condition, they clearly differ. They have rated higher. But we see that also in the spontaneous condition, at least there is a kind of, they felt that they kind of integrated the other. So it's more, let's say around here, again, 3 and 4. And also, interestingly, the only ones that differ from more neutral response in the spontaneous condition is that they felt that they indeed attended to the other person and they were influenced. But somehow it lives in that they suppressed this influence. And so the summary of our results until now is that the unintentional synchronization in more improvised settings is not so striking compared to other studies where they were doing more rhythmic movements. And also, however, some individual movement properties still seem to be affected. And for the future work, I would like to dig more into patterns of self-other integration, segregation, and we hope that at least neurally this would be more clear the results neurally, because the other person is there also in the spontaneous, and they kind of try to inhibit. It looks like in this kind of study, at least, that they were more self-focused in a way. And then, of course, we are interested in the variability in general and how these social network properties can affect the interaction. And thank you very much for your attention, and all my colleagues.
Great talk. So we have time for questions. Never.
I'm allowed to ask
Yeah.
questions now because I was
Yeah.
that. So thank you so much for your talk. I suppose it's the obvious thing, but I assume that the reason you're not seeing that much in the sort of middle improvisation or spontaneous is individual differences. I think we all.
That's why we wanted to, we
Yeah.
wanted to dig more in the individual or inter-individual differences, and this, but I hope maybe more people would show.
I mean, from my experience, it's really been not necessarily that it's in two categories, but maybe you could do some kind of clustering analysis to see what kinds of patterns you get within that mix. But I mean, even just our little 2-minute experience, I'm sure there were, a variety of strategies and also experiences that push people into these different, maybe multiple categories of people who are more likely to either just revert to self-focus or more to self-other focus. And even that seems too binary, but at least so the framework we've put together is that there'll be this relative contribution or ratio between self-focus and self-other focus. And depending on your specific ratio, you'll fall into one of these different categories. But it didn't surprise me, actually, that in general, it would be closer to, just because, that's certainly been what we've seen. It's hard to make normal people do it. So that's great.
So Asaf, I think, was next.
Thank you. It's very interesting. I think it took me all the way to the end to understand this spontaneous one when I mean, like condition, because I was like, what is, and I understood that it took me a while to see the obvious response that we are talking with the literature about this spontaneous synchronization, but it does. I'm just wondering what else could make that slightly more like an improvisation practice, because I think the classical neuro game, one-dimensional neuro game, which I've a lot of. I mean, I don't think it's more related to theater. I don't know why more in theater than actually in dance, but it at least there is a clear sense that there is something we do together, and so there is something. It's weird, and especially for non-experts, and that's also what they found in the original study. It's the experts that actually produce the interesting stuff, right? They're not novices, but at least there's something that now I'm in front of this small thing. I move it around. There's like maybe adds. I'm wondering if it maybe too late for this study, but to think of making that something, talking about emotions, talking about expressivity. I mean, give some. We do something with that, and then we see while I do that, like expressing an emotion, expressing whatever, if I'm influenced or not by the other. Like, I think that would just make people have some need for the actual, otherwise it's a very.
Yes, we want us to start a little bit more to see if you don't say anything, if you don't prime about anything, what would happen, and then kind of manipulate it to make it a bit more, let's say, or self-focused or other focused, or manipulate something. Yeah, but it's interesting.
Still give
Yes, to give
novice
something more.
And just one I just from the video, your thing that the tool, whatever that rail you have for movement seem to be relatively small. I don't know if you compare it to the one from the original study and others. I think the MEG also study was a relatively small one. Just wondering this. It seems to me from just intuition of no one definitely just something or whatever. I just feel that might have an impact that might be relevant to understand, like in this, because there's so much now studies on this one-dimensional. If you have this or that or that or that might create a very different kind of.
But yeah, if it was longer, I would think that it would be even more self-focused because it's easier to kind of inhibit the other person. I think the more restricted is a movement, kind of maybe more you maybe fall into synchrony accidentally. I don't know.
I'm not sure.
But you have to expand your.
Yes.
So.
But they look at a specific point always.
Yeah, it's part of the instruction.
Yes. No.
I think we still have some time for Peter. If there are no other questions, please go for it. Yeah.
I was just thinking that there are other ways to coordinate or to react to the other one's movements than by synchronizing with them.
Yeah.
And maybe there's some methods to look at that because clearly they don't synchronize, but other things like that. I was just wondering, I don't know if you were there during data collection or someone else, but
Yes.
just qualitatively, do they seem to start reacting to each other? Or do they look like they just ignored each other?
I think I cannot see what I just see that they follow a bit what they have to do because it's inside a room and I'm outside, it has to be soundproof and everything. But then I kind of ask them also more, and they mostly say, I mean, they have to look there and they see their hand, but they say that they mostly just did their thing. And when I ask them what they.
So then, because I guess one could also ask not to synchronize, but just to care what the other one is doing and relate to it somehow, whatever.
Put it, I mean, the instructions. I think the instructions really make a difference.
Yeah, exactly. And so, of course, you ask them to synchronize, they synchronize.
Yeah.
But
so maybe you have to put it in the possibilities at least, because maybe even this sentence at your preference somehow like prime them to do
just what they want.
thing.